Mr. Valencia,
Here.
Mrs. Flores,
Here.
Mrs. Cordero,
Here.
Mr. Lara.
Here. Item A, reporting out on closed session, conference with labor negotiators, CSCA. Information was shared. Item B, conference with labor negotiators, SMEA. Information was shared. Yes, we will be going back into closed sessions to finish those other conversations that we had to come out to our regular meeting. Item B, calendar of upcoming meetings, activities, and events. January 17th, 2022, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. No school district's offices are closed. On February 3rd, 2022 at 4 p.m., Santa Maria Bonita School District closed session board meeting, review of new superintendent applications. February 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m., Santa Maria Bonita School District's regular board meeting. Item 4, public comments. The public comments are intended for members of the public to address the Board of Education on items involving the school district. Such testimony shall be limited to 3 minutes each, 450 words per person's subject, and 15 minutes total each topic. If an answer to a specific question is requested, the board president will, if appropriate, direct administration to respond in writing. Do we have any public comments, Mr. Beach?
We do have one public comment.
Okay.
We have Mr. Jose Segura, president of SMEA.
Good evening, Mr. Segura. Happy New Year. Oh. Is he in? Throw me a thumbs up when he is. Good evening, Mr. Segura. Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year to you and the rest of the board. There you go. I'll get the hang of this. All right, good to see everybody. Let me know when my time begins.
You're good to go.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Negotiations are a delicate process. By law, both parties provide their team with the authority to settle tentative agreements, and the team members are then required to support those agreements. This board and your bargaining team has failed on both accounts. Your bargaining team failed to support and defend the negotiated calendar tentative agreement. This board failed to show support or confidence in its own bargaining team when it decided to illegally ratify only part of the calendar TA. Mr. Hollinshead's personal issue with the placement of spring break is just that, personal. He provided no actual evidence that there are any concerns with the placement of spring break by anyone other than himself. Mr. Hollinshead's only defense for demanding the change, by his own words, is that the placement of spring break does not coincide with his wants for the Santa Maria High School track team. I don't believe Mr. Hollinshead was elected by the people of Santa Maria Valley to represent the high school track team, nor do I believe the voters would be too excited to hear that he's making decisions for our district based on the needs of high school track. And all this wouldn't be so much of an issue if it was just one board member sharing their personal preferences based on their extracurricular responsibilities. But it wasn't just that one board member. It was all board members who allowed him to bully them into illegally accepting only part of a tentative agreement in order to placate Mr. Hollinshead's personal agenda. Consider how it would play out if voting constituents on both sides of a bargain were allowed to accept what they wanted and ignore what they did not. Keep in mind that this type of action, if legal, which it is not, would apply to both parties. So what if my members only voted for articles or sections of articles that they liked and ignored the rest? Can you imagine what a mess that would create and how little, if anything, would get done? By taking the actions that you did at the last board meeting regarding the tentative agreement for calendar, this board essentially gave the green light for this type of behavior to occur. Is that what you really want for both sides? Now, of course, as I said, the action taken by this board and its bargaining team are clearly illegal. And to Mr. Hollinshead specifically, Your clear disdain for the Easter holiday is both insulting to me personally as a practicing Catholic and to our community of Christian brothers and sisters and their allies throughout the Santa Maria Valley. These folks are our families and our students. Read the room. Your repeated display of disrespect for the religious belief within our community was both embarrassing and saddening. I'm sure there were other ways that you could have expressed your desire to detach spring break from Easter weekend that would not have been offensive, but for whatever reason, that was not the path you chose. It is our belief that your ratification vote to approve only part of the calendar tentative agreement is equivalent to ratification of the entire TA because selective approval is not a real thing legally. My hope is that this board will take a long, hard look at its actions and do what is right in the eyes of the law by acknowledging the entire calendar TA and working to do better in the future of negotiations. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, and excuse me, I made a mistake here. We forgot to do the Pledge of Allegiance. That is my mistake. So
That was actually my mistake, Mr. Lara.
I looked over at our flag and I said, uh-oh, and let Mr. Segura finish. So if we could all please stand, and we can do our pledge. I'll lead. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And again, excuse me. Item 5, approval of agenda as presented.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second it.
Ms. Move, Ms. Flores second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Roll call?
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mrs.
Aye.
Mr. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara.
Aye. Item 6, consent agenda. Actions proposed for the consent agenda are consistent with the adopted policies and approval practice of the district and are deemed routine in nature. They will be acted upon by a roll call vote in one motion with one discussion unless a member or board requests an item removal from the consent agenda, in which the event will be taken up in an other indicated on the main agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Ms. Cordero moves, Ms. Flores seconds. Roll call?
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara.
Aye. Action items. 7A. Resolution 21-12, resolution recognizing a state of emergency and authorizing teleconference meetings pursuant to AB 361. Mr. Beecher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lara.
You're muted.
On the agenda. Thank you very much. I apologize for being muted. As the board knows, this has been a resolution ongoing for several months now. One of the provisions is that we can, the board can extend every 30 days the opportunity to conduct meetings in remote. I'm going to be sharing information with the school board a little bit later connected to reopening school yesterday, where you'll see information you probably have already reviewed about the significant spike in infection from COVID-19 in our community and throughout the world. And so at this time, we present this for the board's consideration, knowing that it is safest to conduct this in remote, and looking forward to a time when we can welcome the public back into our board meetings in the future.
It'll look like sometime soon we'll be back. Hopefully. Things will get better here in the next couple months.
I'll move to adopt resolution 2112.
I'll second.
John made a motion.
Oh, I didn't
I was pointing to the speaker.
Oh, I didn't hear him.
Yes, he did. He made a motion.
Mr. Hollingshead moved, Ms. Cordero second. Sorry about that, Mr. Hollingshead. That the Board of Education adopt Resolution 21-12, resolution recognizing a state of emergency and reauthorizing teleconference meetings pursuant to AB 361 to make a finding that the current circumstances meet the requirements of AB 361 and Government Code Section 54953 to conduct meetings remotely. Roll call.
Mr. Hollingshead,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Laura.
Aye. Motion passes. 7B, Resolution 21-13, 2022-2023 California State Preschool Program Contract. Ms. Loftus, good evening and Happy New Year.
Good evening and Happy New Year to you. Thank you. Resolution 2113 is an annual resolution that affirms the district's intent to continue providing state preschool programs, as well as to confirm the appropriation for the 22-23 school year. So I ask that the board consider this resolution and approve our intent to move forward with continuing our state preschool programs into the next school year.
Questions, anybody?
I'd like to make a recommendation that the Board of Education approve Resolution 2113, authorization to submit the 2022-2023 California State Preschool Program contract as presented.
I'll second.
Ms. Flores moves, Mr. Valencia second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hollingshead,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Laura.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7C, Board authorization to allow the interim superintendent to award RFP number 5202 Student Transportation Services. Mr. Beecher.
Thank you very much, President Lara. I'll have some comments, I'm sure, towards the end, but to give the board some background on this process and then the recommendation, I'd hand that off to Ms. Patricia McKnight, our coordinator for purchasing.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. In November 2021, district staff utilized an RFP procurement method to request proposals from professional and qualified transportation firms to provide safe, efficient, and reliable student transportation services for Santa Maria Bonita School District students. The RFP procurement method allows an agency to award a contract based on selected criteria, which is independently scored by an evaluation committee. Although cost is an important factor and carries the highest possible points, the award is based on the highest ranked firm, which may or may not be the lowest proposal. 3 proposals were received, with one of the 3 proposals being deemed non-responsive to the specifications. The remaining 2 proposals were submitted to the evaluation committee for scoring. The evaluation committee for this project consisted of the interim superintendent, coordinator of maintenance and operations, a maintenance and operations supervisor, maintenance and operations secretary, and a site principal. The evaluation committee scored the proposals based on 1, technology, audio, visual, and routing systems, 2, the preventative maintenance plan, 3, customer service, communication, and references, 4, operation approach and personnel, 5, safety plan and record, and 6 is the cost, which was the highest weighted criteria at 60 possible points. Cost was evaluated and scored by purchasing. After the initial scoring, both firms met the competitive range and were invited to participate in an on-site presentation and interview, which was scored by 3 of the evaluation committee members. Out of a possible 150 points, first student scored 133 points, with cost coming in at $4,656,542. And Santa Barbara Transportation scored 126 points, with cost coming in at $4,054,469.72. A notice of intent to award was issued on January 7th, and proposers are allowed 5 business days after the issuance of the notice to file an appeal for award of the award. Tonight, we are requesting board authorization to allow the interim superintendent to award RFP 5202 for student transportation service to the highest ranked firm upon the expiration of the 5 business day appeal period. District staff will return to the board in February requesting ratification of the award.
Thank you, Ms. McKnight. Can you, again, because the item itself does not include the cost, and if it's available, the scoring, can you be sure to repeat that for us so that those of us who want to keep notes on it, we have the numbers available?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
So first student scored 133 points. Cost is $4,656,542. 4,656,542.00. Santa Barbara Transportation scored 126 points, with cost being $4,054,469.72. That's 4,054,469.72.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the things I want to describe real quick when I'm reviewing these numbers is I look at the cost and I see that one is higher than the other and the scores are really close. And what I want to make sure the board understands is that the difference in cost is reflected in those scores. So please don't think of them independently and say that score is so close and the cost is so different. You know, let's look in a different direction. It's accounted for in those numbers. And again, that's part of the proximity of those scores is the lower cost of the second vendor. So I wanted to kind of clarify that just to make sure you understand the objectivity that was used as purchasing scored the cost. And again, being an evaluator, I was not privy to those costs until essentially tonight. I had access to it earlier, but essentially tonight, because during my evaluation, cost is not a factor. As a evaluator on the committee, I'm thinking, what am I seeing as far as the services that we'll be receiving from these 2 companies? So that's something I wanted to make sure and clarify. And the other thing I wanted to make sure that the board understands is the extension of that authority to me as the interim superintendent to authorize this contract after the expiration of the appeal period. That is not a traditional way. Generally, we like to be here at the board meeting with the entire process complete so that the board can make a clean award. The urgency of getting this contract signed and getting the party, whoever the successful party was, gearing up for next year is critical. And so to save time and make sure that we're not waiting for the next board meeting after the appeal period, we're asking for that authorization for me to go ahead and ratify the decision dictated by these scores. What I'll tell you is if an appeal is received, we're again going to act in accordance with our bid documents, our proposal documents, as far as making sure that appeal gets the consideration and the processing that it needs. So I'll pledge that to you. and then also make sure and communicate with you the things that occur after this board meeting prior to signing the contract and processing it, assuming we get their post-appeal period.
Here, in the last paragraph, basically states that all the, I mean, this is what we're looking for the safety of our kids.
You're on mute.
Oh, thank you. The last paragraph, you know.
Still on mute.
I think states it all about the safety of our kids with the technology of audio and visual, and knowing that, you know, we hope nothing happens with so much rush traffic in the morning, but at least we've got, if they do have these systems on their vehicles, we are taking the precautions to be safe with the kids, our kids on those buses getting to and from school. So let's see who comes.
Well, I was just looking at the points difference and the cost difference.
Yeah.
Obviously, to me, First Student definitely has some things that are safety oriented, and Santa Barbara Transportation does not, because there's that big cost difference. So when we're looking at the description,
So
I can kind of see that there is some needed things that our students need to be safe in riding those buses
and-
versus things that are not provided on the other
Well-
bid.
right. Let me.
We're
let me make
drawing a conclusion from, at least from my board packet, of just the listing of those things. Was there anything specific, Matt, that stuck out from First Student? Of those things listed outside of the price that made that score so different?
Thank you for asking that question, Mr. Hollinshead. I wanted to make sure and comment based on Ms. Flores, your comments. Safety is something that every transportation provider values, and Student Transportation of America scored very well from a safety standpoint. And I don't want anyone who happens to be watching this video now or in the future to think that any of the evaluators or this school board sees anything except for an excellent safety record with our longtime partners, STA. That isn't what made the difference. It was, again, a very competitive process looking at many different criteria, and each of the evaluators had different scores, but in many ways they were the same, at least by shape. And the comparison of each of those things, where each parameter scored First Student higher for each evaluator, pushed them over the edge to the point where even with a lower cost, First Student still came in with the highest ranking. But again, our longtime partner, Student Transportation, there wasn't an issue with their safety program at all. And they have always had an excellent safety record with our students, for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anybody have any other questions?
Matt, and the only other question I had was, because they're listed as being from, or headquartered at least in Cincinnati, is there a local example of them serving somebody else in our proximity, or?
Sure. Let me
how do
start
we
with a
evaluate that?
response. Yeah, let me start with a response, and then Ms. McKnight, if you have the data, which you probably don't have at your fingertips, as far as how many different states and provinces they operate in. They do have a hub in Ventura, and so they do provide services in Ventura. We did, as part of the oral presentation, meet with Mr. Summers, who is the regional manager inclusive of our area. And so they do have local representation. They are the largest vendor or provider of student transportation services in the nation. The statement they made in the presentation was that their services, the total of their services, is greater than their other two significant contributors combined.
Wow.
They're a sizable company, and a wide breadth of services to benefit our students and our families, and that's reflected also in the scoring.
Makes sense. Then I go forward with the recommendation that the Board of Education authorize the interim superintendent to award RFP 5202 student transportation services to the highest ranked firm upon the expiration of the timeline for appeal as presented.
I'll second that.
Ms. Flores moves, Ms. Cordero seconds. All in favor?
Roll call.
Aye.
Roll call?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Roll call? Excuse me, Ms. Cordero. Roll call, Mr.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero. Mr. Lara.
Aye.
Thank you again, President Lara. Ms. McKnight, did you want to restart? Okay. Ms. McKnight also took care of this process for us, governed this process for us. So I will hand the mic over to her to describe for you how we ended with this recommendation.
Good evening again, Ms. McKnight.
Good evening. The district invited qualified firms to submit statements of qualifications to provide professional architectural services on an as-needed basis. We utilized an RFSQ process for this procurement. This process is very similar to an RFP process in that proposals are scored based on selected criteria. The main difference is cost for professional services are not scored. Proposers, however, have to submit their firm's fee schedule. We had prepared the specifications, and a notice inviting proposals was advertised, posted on Planet Bids. 4 proposals were received and opened on December 15th. An evaluation committee consisting of 4 maintenance and operations staff members evaluated and scored the proposals. All 4 proposals scored within the competitive range. And staff is recommending awarding a master agreement to each of the 4 firms to provide architectural services on an as-needed basis. During the term of this agreement, different projects will be awarded through a task order process against the master agreement. This basically just allows us to have a pool of architects that we can call on based on their specialty. In the future, as we have a need, we may come back and add on to this pool. But at this time, we do have 4 that met the requirements that we would like to award master agreements to.
And again, just to make sure, Mr. Valencia, did you unmute for a question?
Oh, yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. McKnight. A question that I had was, I know I've been reading and hearing a lot about during the pandemic, a lot of our veteran-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses were hit particularly hard. And I'm wondering if, since I'm the newest member on the board, what process, if any, do we have looking at supplier diversity to ensure that women-owned businesses have access, right, to these types of contracts or bids, minority-owned businesses, and other disenfranchised communities. Do you know anything about that?
So we have a very open and transparent process. We invite the community. We do everything to try to drum up a business per se. We're more than happy to work with those businesses. I would love to see more of those businesses get involved and submit proposals. Anybody is able to register through Planet Bids and have access to our bidding process, and we certainly encourage that. I am more than happy to work with any of them. It's all out there. They're welcome to participate, and we would certainly love to see that.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Do you happen to know if there's situations where veteran-owned businesses, for example, like aren't aware of like the process to submit bids, or they're unfamiliar with the process? Do you know of situations where that's the case, or is it generally well understood that minority-owned businesses know exactly what to do in order to submit a bid?
There's several state programs out there that train and offer training on how to do business with local agencies. And again, we advertise in the local paper. So they see it in the paper. We give directions on how to find our bids and how to find our solicitations. And then we also advertise with plan rooms. So, many of these contractors and agencies, they and firms, they belong to these plan rooms. So they will see those notifications there as well.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Valencia. Thank you, Ms. McKnight. It is important to have this information as it pertains to this process, so that, while there are broader processes and broader procedures that are always in place, those questions particular to this process, to know those are the efforts that we always go through. I appreciate your questions, Ms. McKnight. Thank you for providing your answers. I did want to just really quickly walk through the task order process. It's not common in the work that we do. We use it mostly, if not exclusively, for our architectural services. Generally, we do need a high quality, well established architectural firm to handle our design needs. As we've talked several times, the Division of State Architect is very particular. Their processes are, I'll say, burdensome. And so there needs to be a lot of strength and support from our designer to navigate that process. But having said that, the task order component is about making sure we do have several folks to go to. And the reason there isn't a cost component on this evaluation is that cost doesn't come into play until we issue that task order. So we'll decide that we want to, let's say, build a building on one of our campuses. And we'll put out this task order to these architects on our approved list and ask for them to provide us with a quote and scope of work for those services. And then we'll evaluate those responses and creating its own little level playing field, right? I frequently talk about that, creating a level playing field for those services and then making a good choice about what's the calendar look like, what does their expertise look like, and what does the value look like based on the cost as we make those choices. So I just wanted to quickly roll out what task order means and how it looks when we run with it from here.
Matt or Patricia, can either of you guys just maybe elucidate an example of what the as-needed basis project might be for these guys? Or an as-needed basis?
The most recent examples are initially, we asked our architects on our prior list to provide us with educational specifications for what we eventually used to design the Measure T school. We also used a task order to design the Measure T school. We asked those same folks, here's our educational specifications. Please provide us with your scope of work and cost of services for the design of the Measure T school. So those are the two examples that I think the board would likely be able to identify as part of the task order process.
And do they, okay, so and then they might do smaller things like some of the DSA things that we needed to change on some of the sites like TK or what have you?
Sure. The work that had to do with the DSA specific work where we're addressing deviation notices with DSA was a little bit different. But to your comment, if we were going to be doing a painting project or a roofing project or replacing ramps on a campus, access ramps, then we might put out a task order for that to find out, who has interest and what is the value of those services from that firm on a task order. So that's an example of a small scale project that could show up on a task order.
Thanks, Matt.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll move that the Board of Education award RFSQ number 5203 on-call architectural services to 196 Architects, PBK Architects, Inc., Rashland Partners, and SVA Architects as presented.
I'll second.
Mr. Hollinshead,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7E, Santa Maria Bonita School District's Induction Program and Teacher Development Pipeline. Ms. Dutra, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Nice to see everyone. So good evening, all of our board members. Before we share our presentation tonight regarding our induction plan, I've asked Jennifer Loftus to just do a very quick overview of our entire pipeline program, because it's hard to talk about induction without seeing it in context of our entire plan that we have in place. We started this work 3 years ago with some chart paper, a little tiny desk, Ms. Hart, and a lot of dreams, a lot of lofty dreams. And so this is like a really exciting night, because here we are a really short time later, if you think about it, with a really implemented, pretty phenomenal pipeline plan for our classified staff, our teachers, and our leaders. Growing our own, which is, the language we use in pipeline world, will not only positively impact our district and our students, but it also has a really positive impact in our community at large as well. So it's just really exciting. So with that, I just want to give a huge thank you to lots of folks. I'm going to forget some, but to the folks who are bringing this to life day to day. Jennifer Loftus, Shelley Hart, Michelle Ming, Nicole Wiseman on the leader front, Sarah Cameron with our classified staff, and many, many others, lots of district TOSAs that are supporting this work. So just thank you so much to the team. And now I will proudly turn it over to Ms. Loftus and team to talk about our pipeline work.
Thank you, Ms. Dutra. I'm going to quickly share my screen with everyone. As Ms. Dutra shared, I'm here this evening with our program specialist for teacher development, Shelley Hart, as well as our teacher development TOSA, Michelle Ming. And the three of us are just really excited to bring some information to you this evening about our educator pipeline, and also an opportunity for our plan really to possibly move forward with new teacher induction in our system. So it has really been a goal, as Ms. Dutra shared, of both teaching and learning and human resources to build out a comprehensive educator pipeline. And our goal in doing so is to really ensure that we are fully supporting the needs of our staff and meeting the needs, of course, of our learners. And so if I could direct your attention to the visual, the continuum or chart that you see on that slide, I'd like to take just a moment to give you that quick overview. As the arrow indicates, you would read this continuum really from the left to the right. And while the continuum really does move from left to right, an individual might enter this continuum really at any point. It's pretty much customized to the needs of our system. I would also preface that some of the items on this pipeline are fully in place now, and others are still in the very beginning stages. But I'm a firm believer that if I put it in writing, then by golly, it will come to be. So if we could start on the far left side of our growing our own pipeline, I would start by just calling out that we have a goal. We have a goal to really, in cooperation with the high school, develop a partnership for students who are on an educator pathway. We believe that we can really provide some real life experiential experiences, if you will, for students who have an interest in being in education. And we know that some of them will graduate from high school and desire to become bilingual instructional assistants first, as they may then further aspire to become classroom teachers in our system. So that partnership in its very, very earliest stages is something that we look to develop out. We are also in conversations working on a partnership with Allen Hancock Community College to really support the bilingual instructional assistant applicants who are not yet capable or able to pass the assessment for employment in the district for one reason or another. We believe that in partnership, we would be able to provide those individuals with a support, an experience, if you will, that would then qualify them for the position of bilingual instructional assistant. You'll notice that the next column calls out classified employee development. That column is, we're not talking about just bilingual instructional assistants or classroom teachers, really any of our classified employees. All of our classified employees really have an impact both on our students and on our families, and we want to be certain that we are attending to their professional learning needs as well. And we have really worked hard over the last couple of years to ensure that we are doing that and designing opportunities for our classified employees to also self-select learning opportunities that are of most interest to them.
And Jennifer, if I can just add, it's also been a really nice partnership with CSEA in they bring stuff to us, we bring stuff to them, and that's been a really nice partnership in that classified employee development line. So I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you. As we move on to the right, the next column is a call out to our instructional assistants. We work to provide our instructional assistants with professional learning opportunities that support them in the work they are doing with our students right now in the classroom. And with all of those learning experiences, we know that they are also building their capacity if they want to continue their education and one day become a classroom teacher. So it's really twofold, right? We're continuing to look to grow our own because we do know that the individuals who are living and working in our community are they're most committed to the success of our students. And so we're supporting them in that. And then as you follow the pathway to teaching to the right, you'll notice student teachers. Of course, we just have historically supported student teachers in our district and continue to do so. And we have moved toward a partnership with both Cal Poly and looking toward another partnership with Cal Lu with regard to providing teachers with residency opportunities, as well as possibly in the future, something a little bit more comprehensive like a satellite program that would allow teachers to, or individuals who might be bilingual instructional assistants or somebody else without their teaching credential to work through a program in our district. So those partnerships, at least the one with Cal Poly is a year in the making already and well underway. And we are moving forward with like I said, that partnership with Cal Lu. We're also supporting interns, of course, in our district. And we also want to make a call out that we support and develop the skills of our substitute teachers as well. Many of our substitute teachers aspire to be teachers in our system one day. So in response to pandemic distance learning times last year, we really sat down and started to think about what the needs of our substitutes teachers were in that new environment, and it has then grown from there, and we've been able to enhance and build upon that learning based on the input that they've given us. Now this evening, I am going to spend quite a bit of time walking you through what the induction possibilities that we have for the robust new teacher support that we have currently as a 2-year design that we look to enhance and evolve again into an induction program in our district. Once in our district, and once you are supported through that new teacher induction program, we don't just stop supporting our teachers there. That staff development support continues on. So whether you are a specialized staff member or a credentialed teacher, teaching and learning is working to constantly develop in response to educator request, professional learning opportunities that meet their specific needs. So that ongoing teacher development is really just continuing to grow the capacity of the educators we have in place now. But we also have many teachers who aspire to grow into teacher leaders or possibly into a site instructional coach, or maybe one day into a site principal. So as you continue to look at that light blue shaded area under staff development, you'll notice a call out for cooperating master teachers, as well as mentor teacher support, and then instructional ELD support. As we talk a little bit later in the presentation about our induction program possibility or opportunity, you'll hear a little bit more about what the mentor and the instructional coach support actually looks like. And then on the far right side of this continuum, in the dark blue, you'll see the leadership development. Leadership development is actually led by the Director of School Support, Nicole Wiseman. And just like we're looking to grow our own, starting with our high school partners, with our high school students, we're also looking to grow our own administrators in our system as well. And so there are opportunities for individuals who wish to become perhaps a principal one day to be in a program that is for aspiring administrators. There is also a 2-year program for leaders who are new to our system, and Ms. Wiseman is able to provide those individuals with support, wrap them in the support that they might need as a first-year principal in the system, and then the following year as then a second-year principal in the system. And just like we don't just drop off with teachers after they're, through an induction program, we also continue to support our site leaders in all ways with our ongoing leader development.
And then just know we'll be coming back to you, board members, bringing forward the leadership program that we want to grow our own here as well. So we'll be coming back with that as well.
Well, I'll be spending my time this evening really talking to you about induction. You might have had your curiosity piqued a little bit about the possibility of a residency program or a satellite program. So our team would absolutely be happy to come back and go into more detail if there's any particular spot on that continuum or item on that continuum that you would like to hear more about. But let's jump into an induction. For those of you who may not be aware, California does have a 2-tiered credentialing system for teachers. Our teachers leave their undergraduate experience, the preliminary programs, with their initial teaching credential. However, they are also required to go through a second tier of preparation, and that is a 2-year job embedded individualized induction program. Santa Maria Bonita has partnered with the Santa Barbara County Office of Education from, I think, the beginning of time. Certainly it looks like the late 80s when all of this sort of came to fruition up until the last school year. Although we are still also partnering with them this year, it just looks a little bit different. During the course of this school year, we also entered into a partnership with San Luis Obispo County Office of Education. And the reason I say that we're also still partnering with Santa Barbara is because those individuals who were in year 1 last year of their induction program, we continued with their year 2 induction program with Santa Barbara County Office of Education. But we also wanted and have a goal to customize our induction program so that it is really aligned to the needs of the teachers in our system and that it is really aligned to our vision for student success. And that is why last year we started the communication with San Luis Obispo County Office of Education. We were able to have a little more flexibility with both calendar and with areas of learning for our new teachers. So we started this year with our new teachers engaging in their induction program. However, that is in direct partnership with our district, just on paper with San Luis Obispo County. As we look forward into the next school year and beyond, it is our goal to have an induction program in Santa Maria Bonita School District, owned by Santa Maria Bonita School District, and aligned to both the learning that our teachers have had in our system around high quality instruction, but also in alignment with that, our vision of high quality instruction. There are a lot of reasons that we might want to have an induction program in our district. And I think the first and foremost, the most important reason to call out is that it's been an ongoing request of our teachers. New teachers in our system have a lot of work to do getting to know a new school, a new staff, curriculum, all of the many different things that they might be learning at their site or learning that might be provided at the district level. We found, and the feedback from teachers has been that often the learning they were getting through the induction program through Santa Barbara County, it wasn't necessarily in direct alignment. So it felt like one more thing that a new teacher had to do. We also did not operate on a calendar that was in alignment with ours. It's a county program, and so their calendar of events was on their schedule. So we found there to be quite a bit of conflicts as well. And because there had been gaps in what they might be getting from the induction program in Santa Barbara County, we were supplementing it. So it was almost on overkill, if you will. So feedback from new teachers as a result of all of that had been, why can't we just do this here? Why can't we have a program in our district? And we can actually, and we can build that program in a way that is targeted to meet the needs of our teachers. We can build it so that it is aligned to our goals and to our local context. And in doing so, we know that that would then just foster both that sense of community and ownership of our new teachers learning, but also help to build some really strong relationships with all of the wonderful support staff that we do have in place here in our district, whether that be a site instructional or ELD coach, a TOSA, or someone else who is available to offer that support. And on a side note, we can also align it to our calendar because we know when parent-teacher conferences are happening in our system. We know when our teachers are out for winter break or spring break or when grades are coming due. We can align their learning calendar to what's happening in our system in a way that makes sense and does not provide or result in more burden than it needs to be. And last but not least, it really is cost effective for us to do that. And I know that money is not really the reason we would want to own our own induction program. My goodness, I mean, it is a considerable amount of effort and thought and work going into it. But we want to be fiscally responsible. So we did take a look at that. And as you can see, if we look at what we were paying as a district to Santa Barbara County to provide induction to our new teachers, you will see that it was a cost of $3,700 per teacher, per candidate. In our partnership with San Luis Obispo County, it is a little bit less. It's $3,250 per candidate per year. Moving forward into owning a induction program in our own district, costs that we would have to be aware of would be the stipend that is paid to the mentor. Part of the stipend that is the cost of that stipend that is paid to the mentor is included in the cost that you see for Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's something like $2,000, give or take. It's right around there. So that is something that we have to be cognizant about. That will continue to be a cost of running the program. There are also some small fees that come about annually to maintain a license. As you can see, it's right around $1,500. The cost ebbs and flows based on the number of candidates you have in the program. And then there would be the cost of the ongoing support of staff that we already have in place. In a few moments, you'll hear from Shelley and you'll hear from Michelle. These two individuals are already doing this work and would continue to do this work. So in essence, it's not an additional cost. It's simply just maintaining resources that we have in place. There is, with taking on a program, a need for some additional staff, but there are also many, many grant opportunities that we are already submitting letters of intent for, and in partnership with Kowloon and several others to write really competitive grants, because we really are a system that's ripe for money that's out there and available. And so we would anticipate that any new positions needed would be funded by the grant, by an award of a grant. And even if for someday those funds were to go away, we're really still paying these monies out anyway. We're just paying it to the county as a vendor. So it really is pretty much all things are equal. And so as we think about what it might look like to become accredited and having our own induction program, we have found that there are multiple stages. The first stage is the stage that we are in right now. And it was the requirement for a team from the district to attend the CDE's Accreditation 101. So stage one, we can check that box. We attended that Accreditation 101 webinar, and that is really where we learned all of the nuts and bolts of everything that needs to happen from this point forward. We also have to ensure that not just district personnel, but also school board have a deep awareness and approve essentially that we would want to move forward with providing our teachers with an induction program in district. And then we would be submitting this information on an initial application. Now on your screen, I'm just showing you a quick timeline, and I'd like to show you where we are right now. We really, as Ms. Dutra talked about, started this work a couple of years ago. And as Shelley and Michelle will tell you in a few moments, they have been working for the last 2 years in preparation for this opportunity. And so we did start teacher development program, continue the induction with, if you look back to the 2021 school year, continuing our partnership with the Santa Barbara County, but then joining that partnership with the San Luis Obispo County, as I mentioned. We then in November attended that induction accreditation webinar, and we began really just filling out all of the paperwork that needs to be done. And here we are today. This is January, and we're at the point where we are looking to build board awareness and receive board approval for us to move forward with this process. Upon receiving board approval, we would submit our letter of intent, our application, if you will, to the CDE. And upon review, they would be granting us a CTE advisor who would then support us with the next couple of phases or stages in the application process. Typically, this is a 1 to 2 year process to go from yes, we will apply to yes, you may have a provisional license, which comes about after stage 3. However, because we've been preparing for and building out programs and entered into the partnership with San Luis Obispo County, we are really ahead of the game and able to expedite this process and really jump from stage 2 into stage 3 very quickly. Stage 3, once we can finish stage 3, which is really just, and I'll get to it in a moment, showing all of the different things we have in place already and getting the rest of the I's dotted and the T's crossed, would then result in us receiving a provisional license. A provisional license stays in place for several years. You actually stay in that provisional status for a couple of years until you receive accreditation. The accreditation team is looking to see that you are able to successfully do what you say that you're going to do. And they watch you go through that process. They come out to the district, they meet with teachers, they meet with board members, they meet with those who are involved in providing the services to ensure that the services are in fact as we described them to be. At that point, full accreditation is given, and really the cycle just begins all over again, because accreditation is something that you don't keep it forever. You go back through that 7-year cycle again, always looking to improve and to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our educators. And so what I'd like to do at this point is let Shelley Hart, who is our program specialist for teacher development, I'd like to have her walk you through, and then Michelle, some of the things that we have been doing. I keep talking about we've been preparing for this opportunity. The two of them will provide you with an overview of what that preparation has been. So Shelley?
Excuse me, Ms. Loftus. I just want to reach out to the board. Do you guys have any questions you would like to ask her before we go on to the other, or do you want to wait to the end? Okay.
I'm good too. I know the process, so I'm just waiting to get to the end to ask some clarifying questions.
Okay, I just wanted to see, before we go on, but,
you,
okay. Uh-huh.
Thank
Continue.
you. And Shelley, are you ready?
I am ready. Thank you
Okay.
for having us. So we
Happy New Year.
do have a lot of supports in place for our new teachers currently. We have our instructional coaches, we have our TOSAs, and we have our mentors. And Michelle and I meet with our site instructional coaches weekly, our TOSAs almost daily, and our mentors regularly to ensure an aligned and comprehensive system of support. In August, we invite the entire support team to participate in New Teacher Onboarding Day. That way they get to know all the new teachers and kind of understand where they're coming from. We also align the book studies and professional learning between all of the different groups to ensure common languaging and common messaging. Our content TOSAs work side by side with our instructional coaches to ensure that the new teachers are supported in the content and curriculum of our district. And we have online support and collaboration through our Google Classroom and many, many Zooms. And finally, we have a string of support that connects all the district office TOSAs with the site coaches and the mentors for that clusters, and in turn, the new teachers. The TOSAs use this string of support to reach out and connect with their clusters on a regular basis. This plan of support has all been operating in hopes of an easy transition to our own induction program, since many of the pieces are already in place. Michelle?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us. It's so exciting, and Happy New Year. So right now we currently support our new educators in a wraparound approach using many, many resources, both within their own campus and at the district level. So just kind of what Shelley and Jennifer were saying, we provide our teachers with a program that is team oriented, adaptable, personalized based on the needs of our new teachers. And it really has a focus on resilience, which, as we know, we need that this year. Collaboration, inquiry, and reflection. And we begin the year, as Shelley said, with an onboarding day where we celebrate our new team members. We give them swag, we give them technology, welcome bags, and then we support them in monthly professional learning, which is grounded in our work with the Skillful Teacher text, culturally responsive teaching in the brain, our high quality instructional indicators, and our district's vision for student success. We start all of our work with the vision for student success, but it's also tailored to the learning needs gathered from verbal and survey data for our teachers. New teachers are also supported by content TOSAs, multilingual TOSAs, culture and climate TOSAs, and the technology and special education TOSAs as the needs arise. So when I am talking to our new teachers, as we're talking about issues that they might be having, I make that connection with some of our specialized TOSAs so they can get that extra support. Additionally, each new teacher is assigned a mentor, and they work closely within their building, instructional coaches and ELD coaches as well, to meet their instructional and classroom management needs. So my personal goal for our teachers, for our new teachers, is that other teachers will be jealous of the professional learning that they're getting. I want this learning to be dynamic, relevant, engaging, the same qualities that we hope for our own students, so really modeling that for our new teachers. So our team is very excited for the possibility of adding an accredited teacher induction program to SMBSD, because we're already doing the work, and we're hopeful to add this more streamlined approach for our teachers because it is a real need that they're asking for. And I just want to note that in the September 2017 Journal of Teacher Education, they state that receiving induction support in the first year really predicts less teacher migration and attrition, suggesting that using induction to reduce new teacher turnover is a promising trend. So my thought is that if we have in-house induction with our district, that they'll stay with our district, and that is my hope. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Michelle and Shelley. So you might be wondering what's next. And of course, after a stage 1, there is a stage 2 and a lot of criterion that need to actually be met. I am very grateful and very excited for all of the work that has already been done, because it really allows us to wrap up the meat and potatoes, really, of what you see on this screen. The last 3 criterion are really wrapped around all of the work that we've already been doing. And the remaining 1 through 9, that's really just dotting your I's and crossing your T's. A lot of formalities, making sure that we have the right processes in place, communication, string of support, and assurances. I move on to this slide because really when we're talking about ensuring clarity of responsibility, that is a big component of applying for accreditation for an induction program. And there is a requirement that this work is not done in isolation, and that we have full support of the board as well as all of the departments here at SUSE, specifically HR and human resources. There's also a need to have an induction advisory board. And on that induction advisory board, we would include board members, district and site leaders. There would be teachers and mentors who are in the program. And then there would also be parents of students in Santa Maria Bonita School District. So, and it is the purpose of this advisory board to continue to meet periodically, looking at our program, looking at what we are offering. If recommendations are needed for adjustments, that would all take place within that advisory board. And then also if there were any reasons to question any particular aspect, it might be something that is heard by that advisory board. We know that there are some board members who have a really special interest in teacher induction, and we would certainly welcome, of course, that expertise, Vita, on such a board. And the rest of this slide is really just calling out all of what you've heard. We have a pretty comprehensive, well-rounded team and commitment from all departments in our district to move forward and really support an induction program in-house. And so with the board's approval, with the board's blessing, we would submit our application, which would be the completing stage 1, and then move directly into stage 2, which again, meeting the criterion that you saw on that slide just a few slides ago. Once being approved to move into stage 2, the district is assigned an advisor, a support person with the CDE, and they help us again move through stages 2 through 4 and would help us to continue again to refine our program as we need to in order to meet that full accreditation. So our goal is to obtain provisional license officially at the beginning of our next school year. It is definitely not a guarantee, but we believe that we have everything ready to go, and that with an advisor, we would be able to submit and meet the requirements of stage 1, 2, and 3 and move forward, providing that induction program officially next year. We're really excited. I hope you can tell that. I hope you're excited too. And I know everyone on the team is happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Finally, I'm so excited for this. My goodness. I just have a couple of questions in terms of the evidence guidelines. Is the state mandating anything in particular that we as an induction program have to follow?
Really, that's an interesting question. It really goes back to the philosophy of the induction program, right?
Okay.
And clearly we need to meet the criteria that it is a 2-year program, that it is job embedded, right? And then beyond that, it is about the philosophy of the induction program. And in our research, what we have found is that not all induction programs are equal. Some are very loose, and they don't necessarily call out specific bodies of learning or areas of focus, whereas others are incredibly robust, right? And have a lot of professional learning. And so just again, depending on the philosophy of the program, Vita, it would really be part of that application. The requirements are really just those assurances and meeting that 2-year window that's required.
Okay, is there money tied from the state to this program?
Directly from the state, no, but there is a fee.
That's all changed. That's why I'm asking, because before there was an alignment of funds attached to the actual program. So there was a deliverance of intended curriculum for new teachers based on the funding we were getting from the state.
We are, of course, paying the state the license fee
Okay, so
that
that's
would be
the only
required.
commitment. Okay,
Yes. And then beyond
what a
that,
difference.
yes,
So I don't even know if am I muted or, okay.
I can hear you.
You're on.
Yay. My question, I guess, Jennifer, is, you know, and I think probably this is more, become more of an issue with our distance learning and COVID and kind of reassessment or reevaluation of where we are in social emotional learning is there. What I see is really a lot more of a mentoring program than anything, but not resources or direction of resources to folks outside of instructional guidance or support. In other words, like I don't see any kind of involvement of school psych or any kind of the SEL personnel, or for that matter, even maybe the site administration. And so I know from having 2 daughters who've become new teachers or come to be new teachers in our district, that it seems a little bit more involved than just having a mentor teacher. So but I didn't see that in what you're presenting, I guess. So I'm curious as to what other supports there are.
Jen, can I jump in just really quick?
Sure.
And then finish up? The one piece with SEL that we're all relearning as a language here is that when we say academics, SEL is assumed. It's SEL is part of our baseline curriculum. It's part of our baseline instruction. And so anything that they're doing with teachers or leaders, that's automatically going to be part of it. And then we have pupil support services that takes care of that other wraparound piece of the SEL for students and families. But those SEL pieces, those are automatically considered core. We just don't call it out anymore because they have to be integrated in how we provide professional learning, because they have to be integrated in how teachers teach. And then go ahead, Jennifer.
I will share some information, and then I will also ask Michelle and Shelley to feel free to jump in and add. If I understand your question correctly, John, my answer would be that it's not just a relationship with a mentor. Definitely the mentor is part of the package, but there is also, there are monthly meetings that are had where professional learning is taking place, and it is about all things, whether that is core curriculum, whether that is classroom management, building relationships with parents, everything that Ms. Dutra said, how that's wrapped into instruction all day, meeting the SED needs of our students. So all of that is also happening alongside the mentor. That support is being provided by Michelle Mean. And it happens on a monthly basis.
Well, and I guess the reason I'm thinking about this, all of you guys, Jennifer, Michelle, and Melissa, is that, one of the things that we've talked about since really Luke came on board was really kind of having more of a site-specific relationship with the admin at each site. So my input would be maybe having some kind of even if it's just peripheral or tangential involvement of the site admin, to kind of really have them onboarded with what's going on their different sites and have them as an additional resource or and some kind of really formative integration of them, because I think that's really where we've been striving to get to. And I guess that was kind of more, Jennifer, what my question was, is integrating some of those other players into this induction process.
Yes, now I understand better. A couple of things. I would speak to my own personal experience as a principal with new teachers in the Santa Barbara County program, induction program, and would tell you that I had zero contact with the county with regard to the induction program. I had zero knowledge of what goals my new teachers were setting or how those aligned to the work or did not align to the work of our site. And so I did see that as definitely a hole in that system. And that is why in our design, and while you don't see it yet because you're just seeing sort of a high level of what this would be like if we move forward, once we receive accreditation or as we get further down in that process, we can definitely show you a little bit more about where the site leader comes into play.
Awesome.
They would be written into the design as well. And we have already taken baby steps there by having site admin do side-by-side learning with our site coaches, because those site coaches are often those mentors, right? Those site coaches are often right in that inner circle of supporting the new teachers on site. And so by doing that side-by-side learning with our principals and coaches, it started to make baby steps in the direction that you're speaking to as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's great. And I think, like you said, I think that really bodes well for us kind of having our own independent induction process, because we can kind of, as you said, kind of take and shape it as to what our vision is. And I think our vision can be broader than maybe what some of those county programs are supplying, I guess I should say.
Mm-hmm. And I would think that would be included in our vision and mission statement for our induction program, because what you're saying, that's exactly what shows up on that list of the many reasons why we want to own our own induction program. And part of our requirements is submitting a vision and a mission statement specifically for that program. And our mission statement that we have been working on is inclusive of everything you've shared.
And just to note that it's not just based on teacher needs, it's the teacher needs based on our student needs. And so that's really where the tailoring comes in. So our district has different demographics than another district. We need our teachers to have a different skill set than possibly what the county might be providing. So we assume that everyone knows what we mean by teacher needs, and it's what the teachers will need to teach here in our local context so that we're setting them up for the best possible successful career here.
Well, and it's like any profession, really, Melissa. I mean, we set them up with the support system comprehensively so that they can meet the needs of those students. They get, that's positive both ways, right? And so they get the feedback in serving the students, and then it becomes a rewarding kind of interaction, and they stay with it.
We believe so.
Awesome.
Can I add something really quick? So I wanted to, it's funny that you brought this up, Mr. Hollinshead, because just today I spent my day working on the mentor handbook, which is part of the requirement for the induction process. And the plan for mentors, part of the qualifications is that they would have a basic understanding of social emotional learning. And then with that, we would provide mentors with monthly professional learning that would include explicit instruction on what does that look like, what does that sound like, both with interactions with their mentee, but also tools to use in the classroom. And then talking about the site admin, that is also written into the mentor handbook, that the site admin is part of that wraparound support for the new teacher, and that they actually contribute to the individualized learning plan. So they are very aware of what their new teachers are working on and can support them.
Awesome, thank you.
So specifically in the induction program that our district is going to support, the outcome, the final outcome at the end of 2 years is a clear credential.
That is correct.
And with that clear credential, the accountability phase throughout that 2-year process is married to certain standards, teaching standards, a guidance book, what particular?
The CSTPs.
Okay, that's all I need to know. I get it.
Yes. Yes.
I was just wondering if things had changed since the last time I looked at this thing. Okay.
We're still alive. Absolutely.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yes.
I was worried they'd gone somewhere else. Thank you.
We know
I'm
you
very
guys.
very excited for this.
I know that we will be including this information in your Friday board memo. So if you'd like to look at it a little bit more slowly, we
Please.
can add a few links for you to open up and look at a couple of those flyers. We'll provide you with some of that information as well.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you. A lot of work.
Exciting work though. Good work.
Well, I would just want to throw my 2 cents worth in. The fact that each of our sites has an instructional coach and an ELD coach that will also be working with new teachers and with the mentors for those new teachers. I mean, that kind of support right there is way more than anything we've ever had in the past. So it would seem to me that the whole structure of what is being built not only can and will be used with any teacher who wants or needs it, but in many ways is designed to be the most supportive for our new teachers.
Yes, Linda, I agree. That is the intent. I think that's much needed.
Can I just have a quick question? Linda, are you done? I didn't want to interrupt.
No, I'm done.
Okay. With this induction program and with all the support and all of the pieces in that first couple of slides, is there a piece to support veteran teachers or the PAR law? Is it gone now, or is there peer support for teachers who may be written up, or is that not part of this venue or this process?
Yes, we continue to offer that support. So when we think about our continuum of support for sites, we think about first site coaches and site leaders, and then sometimes it's a one-off or a couple of coaching sessions, possibly with a TOSA. Okay. And at times it becomes such that a teacher needs something a little bit more prescriptive, a little bit more intense. Right. That would be our program for improvement. Okay. That is an 80-day cycle, and it can be sought out by the teacher, or it is something that a teacher could be recommended for. And then, of course, there would also be the support through PAR that could become available if the 80-day improvement plan didn't meet the needs of the teacher.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
This sounds like really exciting work, and I'm really happy to hear that there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy to support it, especially if the feedback that we've received from our teaching staff, if the feedback has been that the services that they've received in the past have for whatever reason not met their needs or the needs of our students, then that's really important for us to know. Something that I'm curious about is I heard all the great reasons to support this. Are there any reasons that it might not be a good idea for us to do our own program? So you've done a great job of laying out all the pro arguments. They all sound really wonderful. I think it sounds like excellent work. What could be any of the unintended consequences if we did our own work? What would be any potential cons, if you will?
I just wanted to interrupt. I think that's why I kind of asked that question about if the state is tied to any of this, because that was the one thing I was worried about in case they changed the road on us, because we had to play catch up sometimes in the olden days of aligning to whatever was mandated for the next clearing of the credential year. That's why I'm hoping that's not going to be an obstacle at all. And anything else that you might have to share.
And I think my answer, Mr. Valencia, would be that it's really hard to find cons to the journey that we are beginning because it's everything we need and not much of what we don't need. If there's anything that I would say, I wouldn't call it a negative. I would just call it something that we have to be hyper focused on. And that's that we are aware of the requirements, right? Teacher credentialing is in our hands when we take over teacher induction. And so it's important to ensure that we are fully aware of all of the requirements and meeting all of those, and that our staff is diligent and doing their piece of the work, right? So not a con, just something to be hyper aware of.
And just, we have to account for it in our internal workforce, right? So although our team has been doing this work, they've not been doing all of the work, right? And so we're having, they nod, you guys are so cute, yes. So we have to account for that in our internal workforce. It is a very heavy load. If you've been through WASC, it's much like that when they come to do it. I've been through this in a district before, and it's a heavy load, but when it's the best thing for kids and the best thing for our teachers, that's what we do. And so we feel really strongly, and this team feels really strongly that we want to move forward right now. We don't want to miss one more year where teachers cannot have this opportunity.
I appreciate you mentioning the workload for our staff, Melissa, right? Because we know that in this environment, so many of our staff are stretched thin, right? And so I would want to make sure that we have the capacity, right, with our staff to meet that need. Yeah, because sometimes budgets don't, allow, right, for additional staff. It is good to hear. It is a bit reassuring to hear that there's grants available, right, that we can apply for, that if this work requires it, that we would be eligible for additional staff. And so thank you all very much for this wonderful work. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it pans out.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Kelly and Michelle.
I would be happy to make a motion.
Okay,
I will move that we approve SMBSD's intent to move forward with the teacher induction accreditation process.
I second.
Miss Cordero moves, Miss Flores second. Roll call?
Mr. Hollingshead,
Aye.
Mr. Valencia,
Aye.
Mrs. Flores,
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero,
Aye.
Mr. Lara.
Aye. Item 7F. The 20,
Can I request a 5-minute recess prior to continuing?
sure. Give us 5 minutes, please. And we will come back. John, are you back? John,
He took a long walk.
Mr. Hollinshead, are you back?
He's not on the screen.
No.
Oh, there he is.
And we reconvene to our board meeting. Thank you for being patient with us. Item 7F, 2021, 2021-22, 2022-23 classified substitute hourly salary schedules. Ms. Beltran, Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Good evening, Board President Lara, Board of Trustees, and Interim Superintendent Matt Beecher. I bring to you tonight 3 years worth of classified substitute hourly salary schedules. As you know, back in 2016, California became the first state in the nation to commit to raising the minimum wage to $15 per hour statewide by 2022 for large businesses, and we are now here. If you notice, looking at the salary schedules in 2021, we had one range that was not meeting the minimum of $14. And so we will have to retroactively take care of, I think, less than a handful of individuals that were true classified substitutes that received that hourly rate. And then moving for the 21-22 school year, the rate is now $15 an hour. So ranges 15, 16, and 17 are being increased to $15 an hour to meet the California minimum wage. And then there is 2 more ranges, 15 and 16, that will need to be adjusted in the 22-23 school year. So we bring to you these 3 proposed salary schedules that have been discussed with CSEA and agreed upon. And I'm ready to answer any questions if you may have them. This is the end of our raising until they decide to do it again.
To change the wages, yep.
Right.
And can I just ask really quick, Bijou, is this a floor rather than a ceiling? And then I say that just because as far as being competitive.
Absolutely. Mr. Holland said, if you look at currently our actual classified employees may earn more than that, but this is the substitute hourly schedule for true substitutes. And we are now raising it to what is the expectation of at least $14 an hour for 2021 and at least $15 an hour moving forward from January 1st, 2022. But if you look at the salary schedule, it quickly goes higher than that. But our actual classified salaries are above that.
Yeah, no, and I was only asking in the context of, I think one of the things that we've discussed in the past is offering competitive compensation as compared to other districts and whatnot, so that we can attract the best candidates. So I just was in that reference, just
yes,
asking.
sir. And we continue to provide very competitive salary schedules for our classified employees and our certificated. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll move to approve the 2020 to 2021, 2021-22, 2022-23 classified substitute hourly salary schedules as presented.
And I'll second.
The motion's been carried by Ms. Cordero, second by Mrs. Flores. Roll call.
Mr. Hollinshead?
Yes, aye, sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Valencia?
Aye.
Flores?
Aye.
Mrs. Cordero?
Aye.
Mr. Lara?
Aye, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Discussion item A of concept of principles for developing boundary options to start the 2022-23 school year. Mr. Beecher.
Thank you very much, President Lara. I'm hoping that you can see my shared screen with my presentation. Thank you. This is my trial run with the new setup I have down here. You can see from the agenda header, I'm actually in my dual personality as Deputy Superintendent of Business and Interim Superintendent on this one. The next one, I'll be much calmer, acting only in my Interim Superintendent role. What I want to share with you is just kind of an orientation again to the boundary change process that we've used historically, some of the steps we go through as we analyze options, so that the board has confidence that there is thought and that there are constraints and restraints that kind of govern how we can lodge a little bit on the process for rolling those out. So again, I usually like to kind of throw a beginning document that kind of shows the things that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about some data. We're going to talk about considerations, some of the variables, things that influence the choices, and then our process for gathering feedback. There are things that are influencing these choices, making them necessary. The dual immersion program at Jimenez requires some more room as that program grows its way through the grade levels on that campus. Also, as the board has heard, universal kindergarten, transitional kindergarten is on the horizon. We are implementing 2 additional months next year, and then the regulations call for additional grade levels to be added in sequence subsequent to that. And there will be more on our plan for that in future board meetings. But right now, we have time to make those choices. Again, all of this geared on giving families and giving the district time to plan for these changes if they're impacted by them. And then the other thing that always influences our decisions around boundaries is infill in existing developments or new construction that brings additional families to our school districts. We have to make sure that we have the capacity we need to serve those students. So this is a very busy spreadsheet. I'm not going to go through every single number. Mr. Grogan in my office, student housing technician, prepares this in conjunction with data he gets from SchoolWorks. There are enrollment projections company. There are GIS company that helps us geolocate students within our maps so that we can do this kind of detailed planning. They help us with our enrollment projections, which we use for staffing. They also work on our developer fee projects. You'll hear their name then, as far as making sure we get the fees we need for housing new students. And then also our school facility needs analysis, which helps us maximize the revenues that we can assess against new development. Again, with the goal being providing adequate student housing for the students who will come from those new developments. So what this shows, the red boxes that are shown in our data for next year and our data for 27, 28, they're on the right-hand side. Those red boxes are centered on top of those schools that have a 92.4 or 90% or more utilization rate. It's just a benchmark to say when you get around 90%, you start to struggle to find all of the classrooms you need for students and then other programs that you operate on campus. It can be done, but you really start to have to sacrifice the way you really want to operate a campus. And so Mike went through and identified all of those items to just kind of identify where are we looking for a potential change. And I've listed all of those schools that in 27, 28 have a red box around them. And a lot of them are there because of the additional students who will come for transitional kindergarten before that year. Some of them are based on new construction in their areas. And the most dramatic one you can see is Jimenez Elementary with 107% essentially utilization for next year and 150% 5 years from now. That's a lot. There will be a lot to do to get that all done. I'll kind of demonstrate for you in a little bit where that's coming from. But to highlight for tonight, I want to recall for the board, if you were here in 2020-21, the regular text on this screen, those were the things we were considering back in 2020-21. We had highly impacted junior highs that needed some kind of change, and that's why Jimenez Elementary is a TK through 8 school right now, is addressing some of the impaction at Arianas. And then Fessler at the time also had some impacts to address, and that we ended up using the assignment of schools to feeders and some other boundary changes in the underlying feeder schools to address the needs of Fessler. Make Jimenez small enough to provide student housing to allow 7th and 8th grade DLI students to remain on that campus. That's why we're here tonight, so it's marked as ongoing. Shape Jimenez, Liberty Sanchez, and Adam to accommodate the development being discussed in the area, and I'll show you the map between Blosser, Stoll, Railroad, and Battles. That's ongoing. And then establish boundaries that will allow us to create potential options for all-day kinder and preschool for all. That's what we were talking about. This presentation actually came to the board with these considerations in October of 2019. We are already thinking, right, in words that essentially are, how can we make room for UTK, right? How can we make room for kindergarten? We were calling it preschool at the time, and the offering is obviously different, but that was already on the board's mind back then. But we still have work to do, and it's really a renewed effort. Preschool is an optional program you don't necessarily need to offer to every single interested party, although you may want to. Universal transitional kindergarten will be different, right? We will be required to offer it to every interested party. So they will have other options, but we will need to have facilities to make those offers. So on the right-hand side here, you have the school boundary, the shaded green for Jimenez Elementary. This is out of our boundary locator tool on the district's website that SchoolWorks facilitates for us. You can see the school down here. The development that I was describing for you, where we have impaction coming from new housing, that's mainly in this area right here. Okay. There's also some impact coming out from this area, the Betaravia Plaza area. We're going to see some students coming from there as well. That's what's driving these numbers for Jimenez. The reason I have this up here is I want to just highlight that when you're making boundary changes, your options involve schools whose boundaries touch that school's boundaries, right? It's pretty logical. And I say it's pretty logical, but I'll let you know, when I first started at the Santa Maria Bonita School District, we had what we called a boundary island. We had a group of students deep in town who were bused across another school's boundary to go to Liberty School. And that was the choice that was made at that time. And one of the things we worked towards was eliminating that island. We still desire, as part of our boundary consideration, to limit the use of islands so that people go to their resident school and they go through their resident school's boundaries to get to that school. But I highlighted the schools that touch its boundaries. We have Adam, Arianas, Battles, Bill Libin, and Liberty. Those are the folks who are around this perimeter. And then the next thing we'll look at is, what is the pressure? What is the utilization for that campus? Does that demonstrate that that school has capacity to potentially absorb a boundary change? Because to say that, for example, Liberty, which is right next to Jimenez, might be able to accommodate a boundary change, that doesn't appear to be the case. 27, 28, they're above 100% utilization, right? So we can't really look in that direction for a change. So I wanted to kind of describe to you again how we orient to these choices. And that's kind of what I have on the next slide. Now I have the Alvin example, because Alvin, as you can see, also is above 90% in the current year and continues to be above 90%, including up to 102% in 27-28. So we'd also be looking in the very near term at potential changes to its boundaries, and its neighbors are Bruce, Miller, Rice, and Tunnel. Now, Tunnel again is above 90% in the out years. Rice, Miller in the out years above 20%. Bruce, and then again, Alvin is what we're trying to address here. When we had those conversations, the last time we did boundary changes, October of 2019, this change right here was one of the steps we took to try and address the density in Alvin's boundary, driving their enrollment numbers up. So tonight, because we're talking about it again, that's evidence that we didn't do all the work we needed to at the time, or maybe there were some variables that weren't a part of the estimates that informed our choices, and now we need to take a different step. So again, we would be looking at their neighbors and trying to decide where is there a potential change that makes sense. While I'm on this boundary, I'll just say that as we are looking at these choices, you can see we're working to follow the map, the streets and roads. We're trying not to cut across homes and go along fence lines from one street to the next, right? We try and make it as logical as possible as we're making these choices. So while we're redrawing these things, we look at board policy, because board policy requires that we bus students 1.2 miles if they reside 1.2 miles from school. So we're going to kind of keep that in mind. We're going to want to make choices that provide a predictable school of attendance. Don't necessarily want to be changing boundaries all the time for the same families. We're looking at safe routes to school. If we make this change, how do these students make that journey from their home to their schools? What are the streets and roads? And we want to make sure that's in place. And we also think about existing bus routes and bus stops, right? Does this create a new bus stop, or does this eliminate a bus stop that can help us be more efficient with our transportation? We also are influenced by uniformity. As you're looking at some of these maps, you can see kind of some strange pockets, right? That don't necessarily look like a nice, it'd be great to have a square around the school with the school in the center. It just doesn't happen, but that would be ideal so that everyone is within some reasonable distance from school. But we also look at uniformity, major streets, try and make sure that if we go down a street or we go across fence lines or however we do it, maintain traditional boundaries if possible. I always talk about boundaries as being, we had the best boundaries in place before we started this work the last time. But forces required us to make those changes. And that's why we're here again tonight. Forces are requiring us to make some adaptations. Avoid splitting feeders in junior highs. We also have to look at how these roll up towards junior highs to the junior highs. If it creates a shift in junior high for folks, how does that impact that receiving junior high to make sure we don't change their capacity beyond what they're able to house? And then we avoid splitting planned development. So if you have a development that comes across a couple different addresses, you want to make sure that that whole development, right, goes to the same school. So you don't have, like, we enter our complex from this driveway and we go to Battles. Well, we enter our complex from this driveway and we go to Adam. And we want to make sure that there's, again, some kind of logic, and as to the greatest extent possible, we maintain that sense of community around the school. Again, like I said, I want to make sure and just kind of share in general the way the process works. We're going to analyze and quantify the changes needed to create the best fit, and again, limit disruption. I talk about limit disruption. One of the things that we keep in mind is we don't want to make a boundary change too early. There's another theory that is you don't make that boundary change too late. We've done that too. And what I mean is, too early would be I make a change before there is so much restriction on that campus that they can't really function. And then those underlying assumptions that I described, they change. And now a change isn't necessary, but we've uprooted, 120 students and changed their school. And so the early indicator that we try and monitor is when students start being overflowed to another campus because it's at its end in a grade level. And that's started to happen for Jimenez this year. And on a limited basis last year, it didn't, in remote learning, it wasn't as big of an impact. But certainly with in-person instruction, having that start to occur at Jimenez requires us to take action for that campus. And when I'm describing, sometimes that happens too late. When we made the big boundary changes around creating the Jimenez campus, we had 100 students getting on buses from Adams School and going to other campus. We had 60 students going from Miller and going to other campuses. Now we had the buses we needed to make that happen, but the timing of getting that new campus in place just required us to really hold the line and do really significant overflow. And we want to the greatest extent possible, avoid that occurrence if we can. But we do wait for that early indicator to see a couple of grade levels really pop to know that the boundary has outgrown the campus it's assigned to. So what we're going to work on after tonight is really nailing down the options that we think are prudent for these changes, and then creating presentations for site leaders to share with affected families. The program we have, like I said, it's geocoded, meaning that the students are assigned to a place on that map I just showed you, and we can identify who they are and then make sure we reach out to them specifically so that they hear the message from their, the leader that they're familiar with, their principal, about the nature of the change, why it's occurring, and why their area was selected. After that meeting and gathering their feedback, we'll come back to the board with what those options are and share with you the nature of the feedback. A lot of times it is, I don't want to go to that school, right? I don't, am I going to be allowed to change or to request to stay? And again, we put that choice in the hands of the principal. And a lot of times, because they're overflowing grade levels, they don't have room inside their boundary for those students, that it's hard to grant those requests. But we do make sure that that is available for families, and again, put that into the hands of the principals to make good choices for their campus. And then we need to return to the board either in February or in March with those options so that we can, again, make planning, so get plans in place for next year internally, but also for families so they can start to reorient to their new campus. And I'll say just real quick, I didn't write it on the screen, but as we did this the last time in 2019-20, the receiving principal was also a part of those conversations. So as families were learning their new school, based on that proposal, they were also meeting their new principal so that both principals could kind of carry that conversation. So that with that, I'm open to any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Beecher? Thank you. And
Rick, you have one. So just to clarify, Matt, it sounds like the maps are created and then the principals at each site then communicates to the families like why the boundaries are drawn the way they are.
So we'll build that messaging for the principal so that they understand the justification for the change. And we have in the past, we'll do again, prepare a presentation, a Google slide presentation in Spanish and English for them to share with their families so that they get that messaging and share that directly.
And then my follow-up question to that is, once the parents receive that information, if for whatever reason they're not content with those boundaries and they want to try to send their child, say, to a neighboring school, though that that's limited given the capacity of the other schools, or it's really tough to meet those requests from the families? Is that correct?
We do have a boundary change request process that's really independent, boundary exception request, excuse me, that is separate from the boundary change process, where families can request enrollment in a different school than their resident school. And again, Mike Grogan, student housing technician, is kind of in the center of that, but it is the decision of the principal to determine the impact on their campus and then approve or make that choice to deny that request.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess the spirit of my questions are, my hope is that all of our school sites are such that our families are excited to send their child, right, to every single one of our school sites. And then, but if for whatever reason a family wants to send their child to a neighboring school, just wanted to see what sort of, that process might look like for families. So that because sometimes we might miss a concern, right, of a family. So that's why I'm really excited to hear that our families are getting that presentation, have a chance to voice any concerns, if any, right? So that we are meeting the needs of our families. So I'm glad that our principals are getting that support from our district staff so that they know how to inform our families, to show that that these decisions are not kind of willy-nilly, that it's extremely intentional, and that it's not as simple as, a school being at the center and then being able to do it within a certain radius or proximity. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this process, because clearly it's going to affect, a lot of our students and a lot of our families.
If I can, Matt and Ricky, just to provide you, Ricardo, with a little bit of my experience with this in the past as I was on school side council when we've redrawn boundaries, and on the board when we've redrawn boundaries, and you're right, the process of providing information to the families is essential, and they've had in the past the opportunity to express their concerns either with or their queries with regard to those boundary changes. The difficulty, I think, that I see is that the numbers are just so much larger than they have been in the past in making those changes, that what can seem arbitrary sometimes is essential, or sometimes, as was in the case with I think, Matt, maybe you can confirm this, in the last boundary change, there were some things where they raised some questions and we were able to make some accommodations. So we definitely want to and have taken into consideration any questions and thoughts from our families. It's just the size and capacities right now have gotten to be so so tenuous, and the prospect of additional development making that more so makes it tougher to accommodate those things. So I think you're right. I think really and as we've discussed with some other things tonight, the getting the information out ahead of things is probably, and giving as much information as possible, I think, is really where our best strategy lays to really allay any fears, or hopefully inform our families to the best of our capacity. But I just wanted to give you like what my experience has been, or our experience has been with the past couple of boundary changes, and how that's changed.
Well, and I'll just add to that, it's never a pleasant subject, and it's always, it's like with any decision that you make, there will always be people that will be unhappy. The consolation in terms of making boundary changes is, it really speaks to the fact that our families get very attached to our schools and they just don't want to leave. It has to do with ownership, not anything else that's negative. And the vast majority find, once it does happen and they make the change, they develop that same kind of relationship at their new school. You know, when we opened Bill Libin, we had to make boundary changes. And you know, you have to expect that many people, anytime you disrupt anything in their routine, they overreact. So I believe we have a very thoughtful process, and the communication over the years has vastly improved. So our families do feel that they get the information and that at least they have the ability to express their opinion. And sometimes that's all they need, just to be able to say, you know, yeah, I don't really like that. But then, you know, they do it because they do see the rationale. They understand when you put the numbers up there and show how many kids are in the classroom and what the space is, I mean, it becomes a reality. You know, they don't see that on a day-to-day basis. So it will be okay. It's one of those things you have to just say your prayers and go, in the end, it will be okay. And assure people, I know it's hard, but you'll find your children will love it there as much as they loved it here. So.
Well, with that, I'll make the recommendation the Board of Education acknowledge the discussion of concepts and principles for developing boundary options to start in the 2022-23 school year and return this item for additional discussion at future board meeting as presented. 8B, COVID-19 status update, considerations for returning to school. Mr. Matt Beecher.
Thank you very much, President Lara. I think it's appropriate to spend a little bit of time acknowledging what is occurring in the community and really across the world connected to COVID-19 and share just some of the things that are going on in the school district, things that we're doing about and to address COVID-19, and then some of the impacts that we're seeing so far just in day 2 of operating in person with students on campus. So everyone is aware, but I'll just depict graphically. This is what's on the Johns Hopkins website. If you've been to it, they have excellent information. I've been tracking information here for really since the pandemic began to show itself in March of 2020. One of our vendors pointed this website out to me. It's got lots of great information about implications, about trends, about country-specific impacts. But this is a nice depiction of really the surge that we're seeing based on what we're expecting is Omicron. Not every positive case is tested for its variant, right? And so while public health officials understand that Omicron is the biggest thing, they don't test every single one. So the degree of contagion and the similarity of symptoms is their manner for concluding that it is Omicron that's driving this surge. And I'll admit at the beginning, I am not the quality epidemiologist that Mr. Ontiveros was. I will do my best to provide good information, but you'll have to bear with me. It's not necessarily in my wheelhouse. This is the national perspective. CDC has several different pieces of good information. I don't necessarily track the news connected to COVID-19. I prefer to try and get information directly from agencies that are required and responsible for monitoring, because then what I get is data, and then I get to generate my conclusions based on what I see. And this is a similar depiction to what we saw with that global chart, just a massive spike hitting from the conclusion of winter break across the world, however it's recognized, and impacting through January 9th when I took this picture. So again, bringing it just a little bit closer to home in California, similar, right? You can see the surge in California and all the rest of those depictions, that this surge is significantly larger than last year's surge. We saw a surge last year. We were worried about that. It is significantly larger. And I can't seem to figure out that my wheel mouse goes the other direction, so I apologize. The flipping and providing that deja vu experience from the prior slide each time. This is the county level perspective. The county, when they do their depiction, they have a line for the unvaccinated infections. They have a line here at the bottom that is the vaccinated infection, and then the county average, bringing those two together. And so you can see that there is a pretty broad, pretty big disparity between the number of folks infected who are vaccinated versus those who are unvaccinated. And I'll also point out, while I was doing this work to gather this information, we do have a vaccination rate countywide that is close to 70%. So these numbers are being drawn from a pool that is significantly vaccinated, right? So even though most of the folks in Santa Barbara County are vaccinated, still most of the folks who are being infected are unvaccinated. And I, again, just present this information. I'm thinking that information like this, data like this, is why public health officials are stressing the importance of vaccination, right? I'm just drawing that connection based on the data I'm watching. One of the things that I thought the board might be interested in is what's going on with our independent study program. We talked about it quite a bit at the beginning of the year. We had more than 200 students who had signed up to be involved in the independent study program. That number has winnowed down a little bit. A lot of that based on participation. The board has been provided that information too in past meetings, that the level of engagement and the learning that was going on wasn't sufficient to really allow that student to remain in independent study, that we really needed them back in the in-person learning environment to ensure their success. But I want to watch this number, given that we've just entered a surge and folks are just returning, to see if we have new requests for independent study. And if that is something that we learn, I can share that with the board in a Friday update, just 2 days into the school year. I don't have that data right now. So here at the local level, you can see, and by local, I mean city by city. Our last glance was at the county level. One thing I want to make sure and note, just looking from this time last year compared to this time where we are, last year at this time, Santa Maria as a city had the highest infection rate, 7-day rolling average infection rate. This year, Santa Barbara City has the highest infection rate, and we've been hearing that, right? That is a conversation that's happening amongst us. That's what we're hearing from media reports, but I wanted to make sure and share that with the school board tonight and community members who are watching. My hope is that this continues. I can see just barely a little tick down. I'm hoping to indicate, although that could just be data lag, like there is a certain amount of time that it takes to get the positive cases reported. My hope is that what we're seeing here is our community's attention to their health and their attention to the health orders that help us limit transmission amongst us. I think the board needs to hear about attendance, right? Who's coming to school? Because the question I would be asking is, are students staying home because there is a great surge out there in COVID-19? What I'll draw the board's attention to, what Mr. Ricky brought to my attention when he shared this data, is if you look back in December at where our attendance percentages were, they're not too far off where our attendance percentages are here in the first couple days. So while it's lower than our experience, we're a school district with really strong student attendance. It isn't impacted currently by that surge. Speaking with neighboring districts, they started their school year with lower attendance. They've experienced an increase in attendance each day. I don't know that that will be our experience, but I know that's being reported, that students are starting at about an 87% attendance rate, and it's growing each day. We can hope that our students start to return. Yeah. One of the things that impacts this number is if you have someone who's COVID positive, they're going to be home for 10 days. If they came to school before they discovered they were COVID positive, they and maybe a couple of their friends will be going home for 10 days. And so it's really important. And I did send a message out to families to be sure if your student is experiencing symptoms, please make sure they stay home and consider pursuing testing. Right? Because that is one of the key features is really getting good information about who might be infected and who isn't. Thought the board would also want to hear about staff attendance. So I've provided just a couple of statistics on that for today. About 85% of our staff is in attendance. Tomorrow is a little higher. There's likely to be a couple of folks who report tonight, depending on how they feel. And Friday is 90%. We could see if that number changes. So that's why I draw the conclusion that they may climb as each day gets closer. But this is similar to the numbers we saw for students, right? So that the impacts are at least consistent, who is present on our campuses. I wanted to, again, as I said in my message to families, I talked about testing. We worked with Heal 360 to provide testing for free to students, to staff and their families. This chart shows all of their activity since they came to Santa Maria the very first day, September 27th. I'm one of the folks who got tested right here. You can barely see me, but I was right here. Obviously, their business has grown, their service has grown, and you can see massive testing occurring in the last few days. Now, I took this picture, I want to say it was early this morning, probably 10 o'clock. And so I know this number is probably up here.
Yeah, they ran out of
PCR. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nationwide, there's a shortage of supplies. We meet with our provider, Heal 360, their supplier pipeline, every single Friday, and talk about what's happening at their centers, what's happening with supplies, what's happening with their staffing, all of those kinds of questions to make sure that what we're putting out for our students and our families and our staff is the best service they can find. To quickly just describe the numbers, there were 1,500 staff and students tested since July 8th. I do. Linda Cordero, thank you for pointing out that I wrote the wrong J month. It wasn't June, and I wrote July. It's actually January. I was looking forward to a time when I might not be interim superintendent anymore, and so I just wrote July. I apologize. No, when you're in a hurry, sometimes this stuff slips through. So my apologies for not catching that. But since that September date, we've performed more than 22,000 tests on 7,000 individuals. The reason there's a disparity there is we have folks who are testing over and over. We have folks who have to test weekly. We have folks who test on a very regular basis based on their family circumstances. And so that's why that number is so much lower than the tested number. I want to let the board know that we talked to them, I think it was like Wednesday last week, and said, our folks are having to wait a really long time to get tested. Can we set a priority line for them? And overnight, they put out cones and signs and started immediately, their staff immediately started giving priority to staff and students and their families to make sure that they were able to get tested beyond the community. Because what we've seen, what you've seen and probably heard about, is that we have a supply of tests that exists that isn't in other places in this county or in San Luis Obispo County. And we have people traveling from many places to come and get tested. And we need our folks to be treated as a priority. And so that got deployed overnight. They're given priority for supplies, and they're given priority for PCR versus antigen testing. Not in every case can they get both of those tests. And there's a couple of ways that happens. One could be supply driven. The other could be that if you're there to get your test after 4 o'clock, they won't use a PCR test because they can't get it to the lab and get it resulted in time while the sample is still good. But for the most part, we do prefer an antigen test and a confirmatory PCR. I did some work to determine how accurate the antigen test is. It's got an error rate that's about like 1%, like 1.9%, 1.8% based on the 20,500 tests they had performed through Tuesday at 7:30 or something. So it's very accurate, but it's still reassuring to get a PCR result that confirms whatever your initial result was. We'll be meeting again this Friday to talk about supplies. I can tell you every time I hear from someone that they have a concern or they have an experience that they feel needs to be addressed, I make sure that our partners hear about it. And they're very responsive to make sure that their teams get feedback to address those concerns. I heard today that the line at Liberty was taking 2 or 3 hours to get people through. And that even families were waiting for an hour or more because, again, of the demand. So I just drove around and I toured each of the sites, our permanent testing sites, to see how consistent what was going on with Liberty was at each of the other campuses. Each was a little bit different. Fessler had a decent line. I want to say it looked like about, based on the feedback I got at Tommy Kunst, probably an hour and a half wait. When I got to Tommy Kunst, I actually was able to step out and speak to the Heal 360 team, and they estimated that it would take them another 2 hours to get through the folks who were waiting. And then I stopped by Liberty to confirm the story I had heard, and the line was again probably 40% longer than the one at Tommy Kunst. And so as I reflect on that, I know that this testing can take time, and that folks can be frustrated by having to wait. And I just want to ask and hope that our families, our community members who are out there receiving this free service are patient, give each other grace, give each other space, and allow everyone to access the testing that's available. Because while our target is making sure our students and our staff and our family access this work, I'd hate to restrict it, right? This is a public health issue. We're a partner with public health. This isn't a school district issue. It's a public health issue, but to not provide something that we can access to the whole community to keep everyone safe, it's not a big distance between a student and just about every other community member. You think about the fact that we have 17,000 students on campus. We have about 2,000 staff members on campus. You stretch out to parents and siblings, you get to 50,000 individuals who probably see each other on a daily basis really quickly. So while it's a broad offering and it creates this inconvenience, I want to make sure that we can continue to offer it. And I want to continue to work with our partners at Heal 360 to make sure that they can sustain that effort. And they are. We talked to them last week and they're working to recruit and hire more LVNs to support the work because they're seeing it everywhere, right? This is happening across the nation in their business. So they're trying always to recruit and place people to try and address this surge. And so that's a part of their effort right now. But I wanted to make sure, because if board members are hearing this, I want to just share that with you, make sure that you know that we are in direct communication with them several times weekly. And again, I'm just asking for grace from our community members while they wait, to be patient with each other. And again, understand this is a service we brought to make sure that we maximize the potential and the possibility for our students to access their learning in person. Right, that was the driver for this choice. So again, community testing does remain available, but it's mostly limited to just antigen testing at this point, the rapid test.
Matt, just one comment.
Mhm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Over the winter break, testing was only available at Liberty?
No.
No, it was at all 4 sites.
There
Okay.
was a schedule though. There was a distinct schedule because certain
Okay.
days were not open because custodians could not be there to open up for them.
I was just thinking, I know over this last weekend on Saturday, it was only Liberty that was open, and I was just thinking maybe there's still a long line because some might think that it is still only at Liberty. So we might increase the messaging that all 4 sites are open. Just a thought.
Thank you. No, and that is an important message. When I did take my tour around the 4 permanent sites, they had different amounts of waiting time just based on looking at the community members in line. So there are other options available other than Liberty. The reason that Liberty is a focus on Saturdays is that their facility is outside of our fence line. So we don't have to arrange for custodial time.
Custodians, yeah.
Open and secure the campus. It makes it really easy, but I'll tell you what happens is they channel their employees from those other locations to Liberty. So while there's only 1 location, the staffing is much higher. This past weekend, they had 10 staff members to conduct the testing at Liberty, when normally you may have 3 at a site location when they're out doing mobile testing at the other sites. And so again, this week, the mobile testing resumed at each campus based on the schedule that we've shared. And that's available to students and the staff on that campus. It was busy. Very busy, very busy. And you can see again, they had a very busy day. The Saturday right here is just about as busy as every other day. It was operating out of 1 location instead of 4 plus mobile testing.
And it was busy at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Very busy.
So
but they're very, very nice, and they really help the people in the line. I was at Fessler yesterday, and there were several people who couldn't scan their phones to do the application, and these young ladies came out with clipboards and just got them registered ASAP, and it was really
they do, Vita. They have an incredible team. And that is what I got. Some feedback I got from the team today was that registration process, if folks are not pre-registered, it bogs the whole thing down. And so getting that process kind of cleaned up. They have QR codes out on the street for folks to scan and start. But you know, that support, when it's needed, they're certainly going to provide it. And they're wonderful people.
That was the same way at Liberty, that there were some people that couldn't get that QR code, and staff was walking around and getting them registered and taking their time, and it was going smooth.
Now, I know at Fessler today, they stopped taking public at a certain time and only were doing the staff and students, especially the staff. So they could come in at 3:45 till 5. 3:45, I think.
They quit seeing, at least what they were saying, they were going to quit seeing people from the community at 4. And then the staff was able to go until 4:45.
Yes, that was it. Yes.
Yep, that's what I heard today too.
Yeah, one of my kids was in that line. I don't remember which one. It's been that kind of a week. Oh, God.
So again, highlighting some of the efforts that are ongoing that we're engaged with. We have 4 principals at Adam, Robert Bruce, at Sanchez, and at Fairlawn, who've been identified. Those schools have been identified by County Public Health as locations to provide free testing to the community.
Okay.
Those 4 principals have stepped in, asked for support, and then started to facilitate on a regular basis vaccination clinics for folks. There's one going on tonight. It actually concluded at 7 o'clock. I believe they were at Fairlawn tonight. And we have very busy clinics. You can see that we've, before today, we had administered 1,200 doses, 638 first dose, 124 second dose, and then 479 boosters. 637 of these folks were children.
That's good. Very
That's
good.
really good. That's really good. And then Heal 360 is working to connect with County Public Health. County Public Health, excuse me, has oversight as it relates to approved vaccine providers within the county. And so those two have kind of partnered to get Heal 360 up and running. And when that occurs, we're looking forward to having Heal 360 at Liberty, providing vaccination as well by appointment. And really making that a regular part of the service that we're able to offer. I'm sure the board has heard, and many of our community members watching online have heard of changes that are out there related to our protocols. So I want to kind of share that really quickly. Related to quarantines and close contacts, for unvaccinated who have had close contact and are excluded, they may return to work if they're asymptomatic and they test negative on day 5. When they do so, they return wearing a face covering for 10 days from close contact. And if they don't test negative and asymptomatic, then they exclude from work for at least 10 days. So this is really good news as far as making sure that people re-engage with the workplace. For vaccinated and not boosted, but eligible to boost, this is how the provisions are written. Who have had close contact, they may remain at the workplace if they're asymptomatic and they test somewhere between day 3 and day 5. And again, they wear a face covering for 10 days from close contact. And if they don't test, we exclude them through day 10. It used to be if you were vaccinated, unless you develop symptoms, you didn't have to be excluded. And I think what this reflects is just the acknowledgement that vaccinated people catch Omicron, catch COVID as well. And so there needs to be some protection for others around even the vaccinated at this point. And then vaccinated and boosted, or vaccinated or not eligible to be boosted, who have had close contact that may remain at work if asymptomatic and they test negative on day 5 and they wear a face mask covering for 10 days from close contact. Now, the way this is written is that they test negative on day 5. And when we were in our meeting with County Public Health, this was yesterday, they said, that's the word. It means on day 5 or after day 5, but as soon after day 5 as possible, right? And so they interpret, and we take, I've described before for the board, and for others who ask me, we know what the CDC describes. We know what the California Department of Public Health describes. And then our agency to report to is the Santa Barbara County Public Health Department. And so if they're prescribing this, we're going to follow those guidelines. These guidelines apply to employees only. It gets much more complicated when you start addressing students, again, built around maximizing their opportunity to access their learning in person. So recent changes or changes in progress, all reference to social distancing in the revised Cal OSHA emergency ETS. I know that TS stands for something, is replaced with the tables in the Cal OSHA frequently asked questions on isolations and quarantines. They're not changing what they describe as social distancing. They're just eliminating it from this text and replacing it instead with their responses in the frequently asked questions. For employee isolations only, we now need to count the isolation timeline from the test date only, and we are no longer able to start counting from the symptom date. it was advantageous to start counting with symptoms because then that's earlier, right? I start sensing symptoms, then I go get tested. A day or two could pass, right? Now we have to wait until they actually have a confirmed case of COVID-19 for us to start that date. But again, that's built around caution is what that is. The definition of fully vaccinated for employees includes a booster vaccine now. There isn't a timeline after booster. It is when you receive your booster shot, you're now considered fully vaccinated. And then there are some eligibility requirements there. This italicized comment has to do with the mandate to either be fully vaccinated or test. This definition's change doesn't affect that impact, or I'm sorry, that mandate. Because the health order, the public health order that contained that mandate had its own definition of fully vaccinated, which was 1 shot of Johnson & Johnson, 2 shots of Pfizer or Moderna plus 14 days. So we'll continue to operate as if that is the rule, because currently it is. If a new public health order comes out, then we'll change the way we govern that activity. And then also a footnote was added to table 2. Employees who are vaccinated and not boosted but are eligible for a booster indicates employees do not need to be excluded from work when they have had close contact with someone who has a confirmed case of COVID-19, again, as long as they are asymptomatic and they test negative between days 3 and 5 and wear a face covering. So again, those are the provisions. They roll out on Friday. So for a long time, we required PCR tests to confirm symptomatic individuals tested negative. County Public Health has said that we can now rely on antigen testing. I believe that probably has to do with A, knowing right away, and B, having access to those antigen tests, right? And so they aren't going to restrict just because the tests aren't available, right? They don't want to unduly restrict people's access to their workplace or to the learning environment. Now, positive individuals are permitted to return earlier if they meet certain criteria. Both staff and students are eligible to return earlier. Unvaccinated and asymptomatic close contacts, both staff and students, may return early if they meet certain criteria. The change for students specifically involves exposures outside of school. I was in a conversation today with a parent and who is also an employee about their child who had been exposed outside of school. She'd been identified as a close contact outside of school. The rules are much stricter outside of school because they know, public health knows in school, students are really good, teachers are really good about reinforcing, students are very good about wearing their masks, right? There's hand sanitizer available, there's hand washing available, there's time for that. And so that exposure in school has much lower risk than the community-based exposure. So that's why the rules are different. So before I end, there's a long list of thank yous. I know I missed people, but I want to make sure and take some time to say thank you to several. Sean Chenoweth and Carolyn Kleinsmith, our nurses and our health assistants, this team of folks is working diligently and tirelessly to try their best to keep students and staff safe. This is very hard work. Right now with this spike, it's even more demanding. And for this group of folks, we need to reiterate that you need to take a deep breath. You need to do your best. And you need to know that this is difficult work. It is a steep climb right now, but it is based on a surge. And if it's similar to the last, the surge will pass and we'll have more normal global pandemic experience on the horizon. If you can call offering public education during a global pandemic normal, it will be more normal, but right now it's extraordinary. So I need to thank this team, our partners at SBCEO, Santa Barbara County Public Health, leaders from other districts across the county. I'm involved in those meetings everyone is working hard to make sure we have good messaging, that our procedures are in alignment, that the good questions get asked to the right people, and that information gets shared. So I thank these folks. Also, our partners at Heal 360, Inspire, Pipeline Medical, working hard to make sure we have the supplies we need, responding to our requests, to customize their procedures to meet our needs. And they're diligent. And as Vita, as you described, Ricky, as you described, just cheerful work. It is hard work. Their attitudes are amazing. I thank that crew. And then our teachers, our classified staff, and our site leaders who keep doing their part, following these ongoing and developing protocols, working hard to make sure that it's well maintained, that there's discipline and diligence on each of these protocols. They're asking good questions as well. They're addressing the current concerns of their employees and their students. These folks, our teachers, are keeping an eye on students and their well-being, thinking big picture. How do I make sure that everyone in my school, in my class, has access to in-person learning to the greatest extent possible every day? So I think this group as well. And then our students and families also who support this protocol. Vita, I saw you indicate our students do a great job of wearing their masks at school all day when they're indoors. They have great discipline, and I just really respect that, because that comes from families who care about this, right? Care about addressing the impacts of COVID-19 so that their students can continue to come to school. I apologize, my mask is causing an absence of oxygen in my brain. It's starting to affect my speech. And I say that, and I reflect on our teachers, right, who are teaching all day with a mask, and the effort that takes, and the planning so that they can coordinate their own breathing. Just a great deal of respect for these folks to continue to do their best for kids. But our families do a great job, and they're also following these protocols, and I appreciate it. And I think I like to think that it's reflected in the chart I shared with the local communities.
Yeah.
And then for everyone who keeps wearing a smile under their properly fitting mask every day, right? I really appreciate that. We all have to share that smile, whether we see it directly or not. We're all in this together. It's a community health problem, and it's a community-based solution. We have to work on this together. So I thank those folks as well. And that brings me to the conclusion of my update of reopening school, returning to school for 2022. And I hope to be able to address any questions you have.
Questions, anybody? Ricardo?
One of the questions from the staff at Santa Maria High School, where I'm teaching, was there's been an increase in some research, I believe, that shows that, I think it's the N95 masks, I think are a bit more protective, I think is what the research is indicating, if I'm not mistaken. And if that's the case, I'm wondering what can we do as a district to ensure that all of our staff have access to those masks, as well as possibly even our students. And do you know anything about that, Matt?
I do. I know that like all PPE and all health supplies, that N95 masks are in short supply. We do have some in the district. We expect to receive more through a state allocation. But what I also know is that they're not required. As I described, we're watching guidelines all the time to make sure that we're in alignment with what's required of us. I know because of their effectiveness, N95 masks are preferred to be in the hands of public safety, law enforcement, fire protection, the healthcare workers, folks in shelters where there is a greater risk and demand based on their proximity to their clientele, and that we don't want to be an undue burden on the availability of those masks. We are required upon request to provide them. Our experience has been that we provide them to folks and they start to wear them, and they're way more restricted to breathe if you're wearing them properly, and speak if you're wearing them properly, and they're not preferred anymore. So I appreciate that. I've heard that research. I'm aware of it. But we continue to make sure that masks are always available. And we've done several distributions of cloth masks for our employees and our students.
Pardo, the mask that you're wearing and that I have, and that the folks that I know that are working in the district have, the filters for those are very readily available online. And I bought a couple hundred of those during the Christmas break to give to my family members. And because it forms well to your nose and goes under the chin, it's also a very highly effective mask, and you can add to that with the readily available filters.
Thank you for that.
Did you find those on Amazon, John?
The filter, I did, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if John did, but I found mine on Amazon.
You're muted. You're sitting.
It's so relaxed here in my home. No, I bought several hundred during Christmas break, and it was super easy. So yeah, maybe it was Amazon.
Well, with that the Board of Education acknowledge receipt of the COVID-19 status update, considerations for returning to school is presented. Does anybody, Ms. Cordell, you have anything you'd like to report out?
Yeah, actually, yes. The Santa Barbara County School Board Association group met last Thursday. And of course, a number of schools in our county had returned. And unlike Santa Maria, which I believe is the only school district in the county who has contracted with an outside agency to do testing, they were all still waiting for the test kits that had been promised from the state.
I think those just arrived.
It was a little crazy, and I think in an earlier conversation I had with Matt, you know, the absenteeism and employee absences were very high in many places. So I'm very happy to hear that even though it's only been 2 days, we're doing okay in the 80 to 90% range, which I think is very gratifying in this climate. I know personally speaking, while you know no one is coming around saying don't go out and do this or do that, you know, my husband and I have exercised caution and are very diligent about wearing our masks, and we are fully vaccinated. So the other committee that I serve on through the county, the one on district organization, we had a very interesting conversation on Monday about districts for the county school board. And we will be most likely taking action on that at our next meeting, which will be January 31st. And we are anticipating, I believe, 4 districts who are all ready to present their districting maps for their school districts. And so I'm very anxious to see how that all works and how it goes. And because I believe there are 16 districts that are going through that process, we will be meeting every other Monday. Well, the 31st, the 14th, the 28th in February and March, and then possibly the first 2 Mondays in April in order to get that all done. So,
Mr. Valencia?
I just want to say to, all of our staff as a welcome back, but, under, challenging circumstances. And I understand if a lot of our staff, a lot of our families, a lot of our students are feeling really anxious, feeling scared, feeling uncertain. I can totally relate. My students start with me tomorrow, and I have over 150 students that I hope to see tomorrow. And I'm hoping that we do not let fear, right, paralyze us. That we can, I know that our staff and our district and everyone in our community is doing everything they can to keep all of us as safe as possible. And so I just want to honor the fact that if you're feeling all those things, it's understandable. And let's continue to take care of each other. All the research that I've seen, as was discussed also today, is that when you are vaccinated, you are less likely, right, to get sick and to spread the disease. I personally am not one to enjoy getting shots. In fact, even the flu shot over the last couple of years, I was hesitant to get flu shots. But in a sense, I'm treating this COVID vaccination kind of like all the shots that our students are required to get anyway in order to go to school, right? They're required to get, a variety of different vaccines in order to be able to enter our schools. And so I see the COVID vaccine as just one more of those vaccines that, that we now need to take to evolve with the times, to take care of ourselves and to protect each other. So I want to encourage, all of our families to please speak to your doctors if you have questions around the vaccine. I think that's totally normal to want to know what we're putting into our bodies. But from my understanding of the latest research, it is safe. I know that there's a lot of myths still and a lot of falsehoods that are out there around the vaccine. But all the research that I've seen, the reliable, the legitimate research that I've seen indicates that it is safe for our families and for our young people. And so let's all do our part to get vaccinated, to take care of ourselves and our families. And I wish everyone a wonderful year. And let's continue to support each other.
Ms. Flores?
I just wanted to offer condolences to Melissa Rodriguez Soto's family on behalf of the board, myself. Her son is in the same classroom as my granddaughter, and they've been friends for numerous years. And I just want to offer again, like I said, the condolences heartfelt on the passing of one of our educators in our district. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yes, and I'd echo that with you as well, Ms. Flores. And to all the Adams staff, we send our condolences to all of you. Mr. Beach?
I do have something briefly that I need to cover with the school board. As you know, we are also engaged in the process of examining trustee maps, trustee areas. Our original timeline that we had kind of reviewed with our council from AALRR had to do with a timeline that would complete sometime in May. And in speaking with Dr. Salcido, and then Ms. Cornejo was completing some forms for the elections office. There's actually a much earlier deadline to get that done than that time frame will allow. And so I need to share some dates with the school board to try and accelerate that so that we can get our district maps completely reviewed by the public as required and approved at the school board level before April 22nd is the hard deadline to get to the county office. And I'll just briefly describe. Some of you may remember hearing from our consultants when we were pursuing the general obligation bond that there is a deadline in the statute to get notice to the county. But the county board of supervisors here in Santa Barbara has an agenda preparation process that accelerates that date forward. So I recall that from our general obligation bond procedure. So I'm pretty sure something similar is influencing this date. So I did reach out to our council to get new dates that align with that. So I want to share with the board what those dates are. And so Todd Robbins is the name of our council. He says the tentative schedule to get this completed by March 9th would be a special board meeting after January 12th, so it won't be tomorrow. But where we have a pre-map public hearing, number 1. That has to happen sometime between now and February 9th, where we would have the pre-map public hearing number 2, okay? Then sometime between February 9th and the 16th, we have to get maps from our demographer and publish them by February 16th. 7 days before February 23rd, where we would have our post-map public hearing, number 1. And then March 9th would be the post-map public hearing number 2, board approval of the map, and board approval of a resolution to approve the transition by trustee area. And so again, the gates and locks on this are our own public hearing protocol to make sure that the public has 2 opportunities. And then we also have to, as Ms. Cordero described, we have to get those maps to the county committee on reorganization, which is an SBCEO formation. They do their own work and review. And then after their approval, then it gets to the County Board of Supervisors. So that's kind of the procedure we need to follow. I think what I want to do is kind of put those proposed dates out as part of our update this weekend. And then if you have questions or concerns, please give me a ring. You'll have my number. I'm always welcoming your calls. And then we'll see that we can get these meetings properly noticed and on our calendar so that people are aware. Yes, we have to have our pre-map public hearing number 1 sometime between tomorrow and February 9th, so that on February 9th we can have the pre-map public hearing number 2.
Okay. Well, send it out Friday, and we're just gonna have to all. I thought we did need to go like the end of January, like the 27th at least, but I don't know what everybody's.
Matt, just a point of clarification, since I'm serving on that county committee, when it has to be a written up proposal, of course, with the maps, and it is considered a public hearing. So our public will be noticed that it's gone to the county for final approval, and then you and or the board president would be present to answer any questions that the committee would have. But our purpose is not to call into, not to question your map. It's really just to ascertain that you followed the process and give one final opportunity for anyone in the public to make a comment or something that could affect its final approval. So we're not judging whether it's right or wrong. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because we're all, there are 2 people from each of the 5 supervisorial districts and then 1 at-large person. And of course, we're most familiar with what area that we live in, and that was part of the conversation we had about looking at the whole county and the map for the county school board positions. So does that help?
Okay. No, that does. This is obviously my first time going through the process, so to provide that orientation is really valuable. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted you to know what our role is.
So then are we suggesting the meetings that Wednesday, the 26th?
I can make January the 26th work.
Or the 19th?
Well, why don't you send out the preliminary dates, and then, because I thought maybe the 27th. I don't know what everybody's got on.
That's a Thursday though.
And does it need to be the Wednesday? Because this is
I can't do it the 27th.
oh, that's what I mean. So we all got to,
Yeah, let's send out preliminary dates as opposed to trying to figure that out now.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Send out,
Save my Wednesdays for you.
send out preliminary dates for Wednesdays, but it'd be better to do it in January instead of February. I
Agreed.
think.
I'll get you some dates.
Yeah.
And again, with the goal being that we complete all of this work on time, and that we have opportunities for the public to participate, and that we always end up with, if not 100% attendance for the board, to make sure that we have a compliant quorum.
Yeah.
And because in the end, what really needs to happen is these maps have to get out, right? They have to be vetted, they have to be appropriate, and they have to get out. So I was appreciative of Todd Robbins to get back to me so that we could have this communication tonight. Because again, I'm kind of making sure that the things that are most critical continue to occur on time. So this weekend, I will put out a listing of dates, and then you can just share with me what your feedback is, and we'll make sure that we get that notice out again as soon as we have a solid timeline. Thank you.
Mr. Hollingshead, do you have anything you'd like to report out? You're good? Okay, well, with that, we're going to adjourn the meeting and go back into closed